And I'll go ahead and share my screen as well. Just have a document so you at least, it's not visually the most appealing, but you can at least see what we're talking about. So I just wanted to kick us off a little bit. I know, and thank you to Jennifer for facilitating the conversation last week. I'm feeling much better, and it was a good distraction to listen to the conversation. One of the items that came up was a discussion about a special session. And so the rumor mill about when the session is going to end is continuing to fly. And so we just wanted to provide an update. Jean, I think you asked this question last week of how the federal stimulus money plays into this and the cart before the horse, or how that follows. And that's the struggle right now of knowing when the session is going to end, is how and when that money is going to come. So there are two options that they're discussing right now. One is to adjourn the Friday before Memorial Day. If they do that, they would have to come back for a special session. And again, either the governor or 2/3 of the chamber, of both chambers, would have to call for that. I did put here one of the rubs on this option is that it would cost taxpayers, they say, $25,000 per day for them to come back for a special session. That's based on the cost that we saw last year with the special session. The other option for them is to just recess. They're looking at, again, that Friday before Memorial Day, so May 28th, and then come back. The 120-day rule that they have to meet is June 12th. But the law states that if they recess between that time, it doesn't count towards that 120-day calendar. So it will be interesting to see how they decide to do that, if they adjourn and do a special session for the federal and stimulus spending, or if they recess and just come back and do it within the regular session. So we'll continue to monitor that, but that's the rumor mill around their next steps. The other big update would just be on the long bill. It went back to the Senate to review the amendments made by the House, and the Senate did not concur or agree with the amendments. And so now it's referenced back to the conference committee and the JBC to kind of settle the difference between the chambers. I'm sure you all saw in your email from CCAT, we don't expect that to be too challenging, as there were not a ton of amendments added with huge dollar amounts. But regardless the dollar amount size, money has to come from somewhere. So that's what they're going to have to figure out right now. So that's where we are on the long bill currently. And that hearing date, I looked just this morning and I don't think it's been scheduled yet. So we'll continue to keep you posted there. We wanted to provide some big movement on mental health, which aligns with Council's priorities. One of the enhancements for this year, there were two bipartisan mental health bills that were passed through and already signed by Governor Polis yesterday. The first one was House Bill 1097, which created the Colorado Behavioral Health Administration. If any of you have been joining on the CCAT calls, there's been a lot of conversation around this. It's been in conversation for a long time. The Lieutenant Governor Primavera Diana was a large part of this. And it kind of came out of Polis's behavioral task force that was created in 2019. The whole goal is to ease access. So right now there's at least 10 agencies, 75 programs for people to navigate when they need mental health support. And now they have a one-stop shop. So they're working on getting that created and built, but that will be a great resource for our local agencies, our HHS, and then for our residents as well. And then the other one that was signed by Governor Polis this week was House Bill 1119. This is a suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention bill. And it mostly does technical updates, so getting grants put together, clarifying duties of the Suicide Prevention Committee, and it passed unanimously in the Senate. And then it also passed in the House with 6 Republicans voting against it. So it was a bill that got a lot of support from both parties, which was amazing. And like I said, those have both already been signed by the governor. So we'll start to see that impact locally here soon, and the ease of access for everybody. And then one other one, it's not signed by the governor yet. It has not passed, but I did want to put it on your radar as it's gaining momentum. It's House Bill 1258. It's Rapid Mental Health Response for Colorado Youth. Essentially would allocate $9 million to youth mental health. And it is moving through committee right now. The price tag on it, I think, is where there could be amendments, but we anticipate that moving through the chambers. So just wanted to put those on your radar around mental health, since that's one of the main priorities for council this year. Any questions on those? No? Okay. We'll keep going. I'm going to actually come back to transportation because I don't think Sarah, let me see, is Sarah Grant on the call yet?
She's not, I just looked, she's not on. I agree.
Okay.
Wait.
We'll come back to that then so that she can be a part of that conversation. So we'll move on to DEAI bills. The first one, and Todd, if you want to provide some information on this, it's House Bill 1011, which is the multilingual ballot access for voters. It was amended and it's been referred to appropriations. Todd, do you want to expand a little bit about how that would impact Broomfield and the fiscal note on that? Uh-oh, did we lose? We are having internet problems, so I'm wondering if we have lost him.
Yeah, am I coming through now?
Here you are.
Okay, wonderful. The fiscal impact to most counties on this bill will be significant. For Broomfield, we're already practicing way above the law language outreach for our voter support. We already provide sample ballots and instructions in a secondary language, and we'll go to 3 languages for the next election. So it won't affect Broomfield. It has passed the House and is in Senate appropriations right now.
Thanks, Todd. Another DEAI bill to put on everyone's radar is 1108, which is the Gender Identity Expression Anti-Discrimination Bill. It is getting a lot of press right now. There are 21 states that have full non-discrimination protections that include gender identity. Right now, Colorado is not in that category, so this bill would bring us into that. It clarifies what they define gender identity and gender expression as, and it prohibits discrimination of those classes in employment, housing, financial services, healthcare, funeral, public services, education, criminal justice, and transportation. It did pass the Senate Judiciary Committee this week on Wednesday with a 3-2 vote, and it will go to the Senate floor for debate. It's not currently scheduled, but it is one that I anticipate you'll see a lot of information on in the press, in the media.
Do we know, let me just interrupt here. Do we know if this would then require businesses to sort of educate people, as they hire new hires? So for instance,
everyone else has left the call.
For instance,
it looks like no one else is going to join this call. Goodbye.
Thank you, Siri, or whoever you are. In California, they require this of their new employees is to learn about what gender discrimination looks like. So is there education as part of that bill, or is it just prohibiting it and then each company has to kind of develop their own policies? I'm not quite sure if that needs to be fleshed out in that, or if that's been talked about, or I don't know what that looks like.
Eileen, you want to take the first shot at that, and then I can follow up with what I know about it?
Did you say Guyleen or Danae?
Oh, I thought maybe you had your hand up because you had some additional information on it.
It's not pertaining to the bill, but it's pertaining to an experience I just had when I was filling out the Habitat for Humanity volunteer form, the waiver form. And there was a gender drop-down box that was just male and female. And I know they have anti-discrimination policies, but this bill would open up the opportunities for people to identify as they want, if they're non-binary, if they're, don't want to say male or female. So I noticed that just yesterday, that there's a lot of people's documents haven't caught up to the laws, and this would kind of help fast track that and create a guideline. Does that make sense?
And yes. And so Councilmember Hinkle, to your question, this is the first, what they're considering to be the first step in exposing the conversation. So it's not it doesn't have technical application. It doesn't have financial support from a state government perspective, from a local government perspective. A lot of it is coming out of the equity pay act also that came in January of last year. So technology, interestingly enough, particularly with state, federal, not so much local programs, but it's always runs behind, 3 to 4 years behind. So the software, to Guyleen's point, that is going to take a yeoman's effort. So the unfunded mandates that will continue to provide equity, right? So again, we keep thinking unfunded mandates are a terrible thing. Unfunded mandates in this particular area, it behooves us to plan on financially supporting the implementation and not waiting for a lot of these software companies. In other words, our platforms that we choose to utilize, that we choose to contract with, that's part of the policy of the social equity that we adopt on the front end. So if you don't do this, if you don't have those drop-down menus that conform with our mission, vision, value, direction, we don't utilize those platforms. So it's more of a question of choosing on the front end who's in alignment with where and what we do, rather than supporting financially those platforms to catch up with us. Does that answer your question, Councilmember Hinkle?
Kind of, yeah. It sounds like this is sort of a mandate, and then it sounds like probably in the future, Colorado will probably catch up with California and just sort of mandating this as part of their training. I feel like we have to mandate training for this for anyone who works anywhere in Colorado, and to make sure that we have, gender identity expression and anti-discrimination policies, but then also education, and that's a huge piece of that. That if you want to work, in Colorado, this should be mandatory education, personally.
Yeah, so again, all politics are local. So focusing on what Broomfield, I think the mayor has, if we had a Pat Quinn mayoral t-shirt, that's what it would say on the back. All politics are local. And this is one of those great, this is one of those great areas that it applies, right? So the decisions that we make may influence the state. And so energy, direction, and focus should be on what we can do. I mean, there's conversations right now with our DEI, which will, what the training acumen will be ready next week that includes council. And part of that is a policy setting for council to drive staff that our equity training and our onboarding training, it's mandatory. I can tell you that our other local municipalities, it's optional. Their equity training is optional. And then we decide whether, if you want to your point, Councilmember Hinkle, right? If you want to work here, this is what it looks like. So those are all those policy questions that impact the implementation of each one of these bills. I wouldn't foresee that mandatory for about 2 more years on these bills by the time it, from an implementation perspective.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Great. We'll keep going on DEI related bills. So there were just 2 we wanted to put on your radar. I believe council received an email about Senate Bill 199 from a resident. It's the remove barriers to certain public opportunities. And right now there's 2 bills that are floating around. Both are addressing the same topic, but in different ways and have different party support. So Senate Bill 199 repeals all of the legislation passed in 2006 that limited immigrants. I don't know if you all remember, there was a special session and they added the e-verify requirement for employers. There was all these mandates around verification for public benefits, food stamps, all of those. Senate Bill 199 would repeal all of those. Right now, I spoke with CML yesterday, as well as somebody from CCAT. They both are monitoring, but not taking a position right now because it's very split, because it's a very broad mandate, and they're not sure what that mandate would do to the local control and if cost would come with that. So then there's Senate Bill 77, which was kind of the response to that was, we do think that there's an issue, but we think it should be more laser focused on a specific issue. And so that's the Remove Lawful Presence Verification Credentialing Bill. It appeals the mandate from 2006 that requests credentialing and immigration status when applying for a license. So as you can see, for 199, it's that really broad category for everything, whereas Senate Bill 177 is really just for specific items. And both of these are in response to COVID, specifically access to COVID support was limited for the migrant immigrant population. And so this is kind of, again, some response to that and to reduce those barriers moving forward in a pandemic or not. So just those we wanted to both put on your radar, and we will continue to monitor those as well. Let's see, is Sarah on yet? Or Camille? Not yet.
I'm here, Deai.
Oh, okay, perfect, Sarah. Let's jump back up. We skipped transportation. I know a lot of folks, and I know Devin's on his lunch break and specifically interested on these, so I want to make sure we get back to them. Do you just want to walk us through, Sarah, quickly where we are with the Front Range Passenger Rail District and 238 for funding?
Sure. I didn't know, did you cover it at all in brief, or should I kind of run through those bullets really quickly here?
You can run through the bullets quickly.
Okay, great. Thank you. I was actually just listening to the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission, and they were completing some business that I thought would be pertinent to any conversations we might be having right now. So thank you for allowing me a few moments here. So SB 21-238 was introduced, I believe, about 2 weeks ago now, 2 Fridays ago, and essentially that this bill gives the power, subject to approval of the voters of a district, and other specified limitations, to levy a sales tax and use tax to exercise a specific taxing authority within districts. It also gives them the power, it gives them a structure of governance and that they do not have right now with authority. They have the power to enter into public-private partnerships and the power to employ its own personnel and contracts with public agencies and private entities. So the commission feels like that this is an essential step to, really show good faith to the federal government and potential passenger rail providers that they've got some skin in the game to help get this Front Range passenger rail off the ground. So I know several of you are looking really closely at this and have reviewed the bill, and I just wanted to offer the opportunity for any discussion or questions or concerns. Lots of hands raised.
I can't find the hand raised here.
Deai, do you want to call on people?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure, we'll go ahead and start with Mayor Quinn. That's the first hand I saw.
So just kind of to give the background to everybody, and I've had some side conversations. So I wasn't aware of how controversial this was until yesterday, when the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition had a special meeting. Devin participated in that as well. Longmont took a unanimous position, a no on 238, and as is Boulder County, I think, as well. And it was Commissioner Levy that was leading the conversation with the mayor of Boulder. And the issue is exclusively along of recommending. They want the legislation to recommend that the Northwest Rail is the only alternative. For those who maybe aren't as intimately involved, they're talking about 3 different ways to go through Denver, 3 different alignments. The Amtrak and the Front Range Passenger Rail is in favor of the Northwest Rail alignment, which is the unfinished line, 4 fast tracks. And so the Mayors and Commissioners Coalition yesterday, it was a tough conversation. Boulder seemed to be more amenable to the legislation. I had Director Davidson contacted me immediately after the meeting, our RTD director, and talked about RTD talking about RTD taking a position that they would sign the MOU, which Sarah and I were talking about earlier today. We don't have a draft of the MOU, but everything would be conditional on the Northwest Rail being the alignment. With that said, I happen to be pretty good friends with Karen Stewart, who is a CDOT commissioner and is the staff for NADA, which is the other organization we belong to. And my basic attitude is, go, it's my dog. So my basic attitude is that if we could come to agreement, the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition could come to agreement with NADA on the preferred alignment of the Northwest Rail, and then RTD would adopt an MOU that says that the Northwest Rail is a requirement, and they would give some of the FISA, and the FISA is the money that we've set aside for increase in taxes for the unfinished lines. And then, Karen said she thought that NADA might be willing to do that if there were certain concessions, support by Boulder and the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners for the transportation or the transit hub, that we would all support the completion of the North Line to Highway 7. And the basic things that Karen was talking about are things I think Broomfield would automatically agree to. And I think Sarah agreed to that when we talked about it an hour or so ago. So what I'm encouraging Karen to do, and Sarah, is to get the NADA and the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners together, because I suspect if we could come to this type of agreement, we would get the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners fully supporting this bill. And so I just want to make that comment because I think that needs to happen fairly quickly. Included on the call yesterday, the call was at the request of Senator Winter and Matt Gray. There were some contentious parts of that call, I think Devin and Sarah would agree to, between particularly Brian and Commissioner Levy and Faith more than Matt. I think there's a way to put this stuff to where it doesn't become an issue. Clearly, the preferred route can't be part of the legislation. That's what came clear out of it yesterday. And we need to get everybody coalescing behind the Northwest. And I guess I'll leave it to Sarah and others if they want to comment on that. I would just like to see NADA and Northwest Mayors and Commissioners do a joint resolution that then supports RTD, making it the preferred alignment.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could just follow up really quickly, some information I can add. I think you mentioned this in your comments because I shared it via email with a few of you this morning that the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission this very morning did support that MOU between RTD, CDOT, and the Front Range Passenger Rail. Essentially, my understanding is that is to memorialize the cooperation that they currently have, and also to ensure that that they explore Northwest Rail as a potential alignment and collaborate on that. Of course, they still need to go through all of the federal regulations through the NEPA process, and they still need to analyze all of those routes. But they did want to make it clear that based on the alternatives analysis, that this time the Front Range Passenger Rail does support the Northwest Rail alignment. Several members, in particular, RTD, Dr. Cog, and a few others had to abstain because this had not been taken to their boards or commissions yet. But they did have a majority in order to pass the vote that Front Range Passenger Rail Commission itself at this time supports Northwest Rail as a part of the preferred alignment.
Devin, any comments? Because you're involved in a lot of this.
Mayor Pro Tem, you've had your hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was old. Sorry, I don't have any questions. I'm just listening.
All right, I have my hand up too, but I'll give the floor to Devin first if he wants to take it. Go ahead, Devin.
All right, thanks. Can you hear me? Perfect. All right. So I would say that I'm clearly in that same place where I think that Representative Gray talked to me yesterday about this is kind of one of those I wouldn't say once in a lifetime opportunities, but this is once in a perhaps generation opportunities where we could potentially get a major influx of money from the federal government for a project in which the state sorely needs in terms of Front Range Rail. So I think that there is a little bit of walking out onto a limb. Perhaps we get into a situation like former President George W. Bush talked about. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me a second, twice, shame on me. We may be in a position like that, at some point, which I worry about. But I do think that this is one of those situations where everybody is working towards it. There could very well end up be with a alignment that does not go down the Northwest Rail. But in my mind, that doesn't mean that we don't get the Northwest Rail down the road. The Northwest Rail still is due to us from RTD. And I do think that, getting some protections in that FISA account to say that, that we would hope that they aren't going to be using that FISA account for an alignment that doesn't deal with the Northwest Rail. So I think that that's where we can kind of hold them to it a little bit, is to say, you still owe us Northwest Rail. So if the alignment doesn't go with Northwest Rail, you still need to work on the peak service that we've already been discussing. So I don't know if that's an option.
Well, let me make a comment there. Devin, if Front Range Rail would be built with the I-25 option, there's no way Northwest Rail would ever be built. I mean, it's just too expensive. It can't be done. I think that the will to make Northwest Rail the preferred alignment is there, and I think we should take advantage of that now. And because my approval of this 238 or wanting to vote for it would be contingent upon that the Northwest Rail be the preferred alignment. I think it's the only chance to get the Northwest Rail built. In my, and Jennifer, I don't know if you want to make a comment, or Sarah, but.
Yeah, yes, Mayor, I would tend to agree with that assessment due to the cost to implement Northwest Rail. The other portion of that is that it is still an active freight corridor that is operated by the Burlington Northern Santa Fe, and passenger rail services such as Amtrak they have the ability and have the authority to make those freight rail corridors work with them. So BNSF is required to work with them if they do want to operate passenger rail service. They are not required to work with entities such as RTD. So that is a really key difference there on our corridor. So if there's interest for passenger rail and Amtrak to implement a service on our alignment, I think that will make it a lot easier to implement other rail services in coordination with Amtrak. Yeah,
sir, I think that's a great point, because that's something Karen and I talked about today. The whole significance of when we talked to the Amtrak people with the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners was that very point you just made. Amtrak has priority, and my comment has always been, as long as Burlington Northern controls that right away, it was never going to happen in a way that you could get the ridership to justify it. And Amtrak is our solution.
And Devin, if I may follow up really quickly on your comment on the FISA, I will note that FISA stands for the Fast Track's Internal Savings Account. So it's not necessarily the Northwest Rail Savings Account, it's the Fast Track Savings Account, and that could be applied to any of the 4 unfinished corridors in the Denver metro region. So I'm not sure if that would be possible to force RTD's hand to only use it on Northwest Rail, and may not be something that the board would want to do.
Okay, can I add just a little bit? Sarah, you can probably articulate this better than I can, but I was on the DRCOG meeting last night, and a lot of the hesitation, Sarah, were you on that meeting too? I'm assuming. Like, they have new Zoom meetings now where I can't tell who else is on the meeting. It kind of drives me crazy. And I'm just there as a backup to William. And I know William had a migraine yesterday. Long story short, I loosely listened to it. It sounded like there's a lot of concern about, if it's a double tax on people, and then also if the federal money is actually promised or not. So if this moves forward, is the federal money, absolutely available? And then someone had mentioned, that I'm assuming it's the NEPA analysis or the environmental analysis could take, 5-10 years. So I don't know if you can add more as to what we heard from Dr. Cog last night, but I definitely agree. I feel like this, I agree with Devin, like this is a once in a lifetime chance or once in a generational chance. And I think we just have to move forward with it. But I feel like we're building the plane as it's moving. If that's a good analogy for this, but Sarah, maybe you can articulate what some of the comments were at Dr. Cog.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Henkel. Yes, I was listening last night, and there was a bit of hesitation for most of the board. The board voted to actively monitor this and did not take an official position for or against at this time. But I think you accurately represented some of those concerns, such as double taxation in the RTD area. There have also been concerns about representation as well, that the Dr. Cog area has a significant population as compared to some of the other portions on the Front Range Rail. And I do understand that they are taking comments on any part of this bill, in particular governance. They are open to ideas. They just wanted to throw something out there. So if there's anything specific that this council wanted to, provide feedback on, we're happy to do that for the bill sponsors. But I think that what I've heard from the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission and some of our legislatures is that this gives us the framework in order to develop a governance in order for them to be able to take action in the future. So it does feel a little bit like we're building the plane or the train as it's, as the tracks are getting built. But I think that the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission sees that we also need to seize this opportunity and at least provide the structure in order to take action in the future if we do want to see this happen in our region. Yes.
I did want to add on the Northwest, both Matt and Senator Winter made it very clear on governance. The issues other than the alignment were stuff that if Northwest mayors and commissioners or the staff wanted to draft, amendments to it, that they were very amenable to those. Do you agree with that, Sarah and Devin?
Yes, they were very amenable to it. And I also heard today at the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission, even though they made a vote to support the bill, they understand that there are going to be amendments and it's not going to look how it is today. But I think that they just feel that there's confidence that whatever amendments are proposed, that they will still support the bill.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Before we move on, and the other thing I would just mention about transportation is, Sarah, I think you said this morning, we anticipate that maybe that bill language on the big transportation bill and funding will drop next week. We've been saying that for a couple of weeks now. So we will just keep watching with anticipation and let you know as soon as we hear. But before we move off of the topic of transportation, just wanted to make sure, Devin, any other questions on that topic or anybody around transportation and the bills that are proposed and will be proposed? Hope I see a few more hands. Go ahead, Devin.
Thank you. So I just wanted to, one of the things that we were talking about yesterday with the Northwest mayors and commissioners was the timeline of this, of kind of the next steps. So the first obvious is going to be the legislation approval, which would set the district people in order for the taxation of that district. Is that correct?
Yes, then they would be able to have the authority to take action on items such as a taxing district.
Do we have any sense of like what that polling data would be for the approval of that taxing district? I mean, I hate to get too far out in front of this, but that's one of those major hurdles that we're going to have to cross in order to kind of get this moved forward is going to get voter approval for this district.
Absolutely. So according to the Front Range Passenger Rail efforts that have been ongoing since 2019, they've done two pretty significant public outreach efforts with a pretty significant amount of feedback across the state for Front Range Passenger Rail. I will note that it was a statewide effort. I can't say exactly how much of that input was from the Front Range communities that may potentially be taxed, but the survey information indicated overwhelming support for the concept of the Front Range Passenger Rail as they were studying it, and they supported a taxation of that to happen. And I'd be happy to follow up and share with you and the council as well that information that's publicly available at frontrangepassengerrail.com from those surveys that they heard back from the public. So I think that the commission has been working on this, felt like that based on the studies that they've been doing and the public input that they've received, that they felt like this might be a good way forward.
District. Okay, so one follow-up question on that. So this tax will all be and I think it's a 0.08, if I'm not mistaken, sales tax. So the one thought I had was that there's obviously going to be areas that are going to be most impacted and most probably benefit from that front range rail. And so I wondered if there was a possibility of kind of a combined tax, and going back to an earlier concept, which we had the value capture area. So around those train stops, there's going to be an economic impact, probably a high economic impact for whichever those train stops are, as well as along that rail. So is there the possibility of kind of lowering that sales tax and adding the value capture area? Is that a possibility?
So based on what I've heard, I don't think that's the intent. I think perhaps some of the financial modeling has been based on what has been proposed in order to make it successful. I did read in the bill that there is the possibility for an additional special district to be overlaid around station areas. I believe it's up to a 2-mile radius. So then there's an additional authority that there's an ability around station areas to support that transit station. So that is how I've read the information in the bill.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Great. I am looking. I don't see any other hands raised. Anything else on transportation before we move on? All righty. We will continue then. I see that Camille has joined, and thank you, Sarah, again for joining us. We got through DEAI, and next is environmental sustainability, which is perfect. Camille, did you want to walk us through Senate Bill 21-200?
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you so much for monitoring this important issue. So this is really just kind of emerging at the moment. So we don't have a lot more details than are laid out in your document here. At the CC4CA committee, the legislative committee, the position was taken at the moment of simply monitor, although the bill has moved to, it's scheduled to move to the Finance Committee next week. And the goal is to, of course, reduce greenhouse gases as well as increase environmental justice. And so the goals laid out are consistent with the state of Colorado's greenhouse gas reduction goals, which are also in alignment with the city and county of Broomfield's greenhouse gas reduction goals. So overall, this aligns pretty well with what we are trying to accomplish within our jurisdiction. And it seems to have broad support generally within CC4CA. So that's why right now it's just expected to be supported by CC4CA, although at the moment we're just in the monitor phase.
Jean, I know you brought this one up. Is there anything specifically that you wanted to walk through or talk about? I think it's really interesting to watch the media articles about the opposition from the governor, right? And the rub between how does it align with those greenhouse goals, roadmaps, and does it help support it and complement it by adding enforcement and accountability, or does it take away, which is what some of the opponents for the bill are saying?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was following was there, as you know, as soon as the state of Colorado put out the GHG roadmap, there was, well, leading up to with the input to the GHG roadmap, there was a lot of stakeholder input that said, okay, this is good. Can you put some teeth into it? You know, what are we going to do about enforcement and metrics? You know, what are the specific metrics and that kind of thing. So when the GHG roadmap came out, it was like, they're missing. Where's the enforcement and the metrics? So this bill, as I understand it, and I certainly haven't talked to Senator Winter about it, but as I have followed it anyway, is trying to do what the roadmap has not done so far, which the state is, you know, from some person's group's perspective, is falling behind on. I mean, these goals are upcoming, and with the GHG goals, both locally and at the state level, and there's got to be better metrics and enforcement in place now, you know, that we're setting for a year from now, not in 2025, not for 2025. So that's what I understand the bill is supposed to do. And I was hoping that CC4CA was going to take a position to support it. I have not followed exactly that conversation. Maybe Heidi has.
Sure, I'll jump in here. I raised my hand, but I can lower it. It's kind of informal. And Camille, feel free to jump in too. I believe you were on our last legislative meeting. I can't remember. But CC4CA works and operates on a system with our policy statements and also with our legislative support on an all or nothing basis. And so if one municipality, you know, is hesitant about moving forward, then we all do not move forward. And so that's part of the reason why we're monitoring it. One of the feedback, I think, is from the Fort Collins municipality. They essentially were just honest about, hey, we don't know if our city can actually keep up with the fees on this. They were really concerned about you know, added fees or whatnot. So that's just sort of, you know, the pushback from CC4CA, but there was also a lot of support from other places like Boulder who wants to move forward and put their name on this. So if we want to, as a city and county, you know, I would recommend, you know, supporting this as a city and county, but I'll also defer to Camille and what her input is too.
Yeah, I will say that within ACES and within DEAI, we've been having a lot of discussions about environmental justice and how we can ensure that our GHG reduction plan and our zero waste plan include environmental justice components, and that we are taking into consideration the needs of our underserved communities. So there's a lot of potential guidance as well as alignment here with some of the goals that we're trying to accomplish.
And we'll continue to monitor it. You can see here in the note, it did pass 4-3 on party lines. It is scheduled for the 28th. So we'll keep watching to see if there's any amendments drafted in the interim and what that looks like, and continue to keep council updated as well. Anything else on that bill specifically? And thank you, Camille, for joining and providing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on. I don't see any hands, so we'll move on to housing, try to get through all these by noon. Let me shrink my screen, I can't see. All right. There were two bills we wanted to bring up. 1117 we've talked about a lot. It's the inclusionary zoning bill. I know Councilmember Tessier has brought it up a lot. It is really stalled out right now. The governor has proposed an amendment. It's been shared out. He said that he will veto it if it's not amended. Talked to CML yesterday. They're still working with the governor's office. They've suggested some edits to his language, and it doesn't sound like they're getting to an agreement or a compromise on these. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. It is scheduled on the 27th, so next week, in the Senate State Veteran and Military Affairs Committee. So we'll keep watching it. The line that's giving CML pause is, it's a line about DOLA guidance is intended to direct DOLA to work with and develop guidance on what material means. So the language that the governor proposed added very clear language into the bill, which I'll share this amendment with everyone so you can see it in red. This will be in the CMO update. You'll be able to see all of the red added in. But there is just concern about the local control and what that means. So we'll keep monitoring it. Again, they're having conversations with the governor's office, and that's where we are right now. And then the other bill that's been on the radar of council was House Bill 1271, which was the innovative affordable housing strategies that came out. There was a lot of concerns about that. CCAT has been in contact with their housing committee. They are continuing to monitor, but they think further amendments are needed. It's scheduled for next week in the House Transportation and Local Government Committee, and we'll continue to monitor with CCAT and reach out to council if action is needed on that. But right now, it seems to still be aligning with council priorities. But there is the question of the local control piece, which we'll just keep seeing what the language looks like. Devin, I saw your video came on. Did you have anything to add about that from CCAT or?
No, you covered it pretty well. And I mean, that bullet point, there's a lot, there's some amendments that still need to be made in that bill, and we're hoping those are going to be made. But, at this point, we're really not sure. So I think there's still some ongoing conversations with Representative McCluskey.
Great, thanks, Devin. All right, then we'll move into the miscellaneous category of other bills that were sent. The first one was House Bill 1164, which is a total program mill levy tax credit. And I believe Councilmember Groom, I think Kim's on here, she had reached out to me. So I just wanted to provide some information on what it is. It's an attempt to generate millions of dollars for the K-12 education system by equalizing the varied tax rates that state residents pay to support school districts. It did advance out of the House Education Committee on a 6-3 party line vote. And the intent of it is essentially to put the cost of K-12 back on local taxpayers to free up dollars from the state. Right now, the biggest question is from the Republican side on whether or not it's constitutional. And the Supreme Court is looking at that. But essentially what it would do is it would increase the tax rates over 19 years to school districts where the tax rates have been reduced because of the 1994 School Finance Act. So as you all know, a tax rate is based on mills with $1 for every $1,000 of your taxable home value. Right now, the max tax rate is 27 mills for somebody to pay, a local resident to pay for their local school district. Because of the 1994 School Finance Act, some of those have been dropped, which means we're not generating as much funds for our local school districts paid by the local residents, and instead it's being covered by the state budget. So if this is passed, it would put that responsibility back onto the local taxpayers to help fund more of the K-12 system. What that specifically looks like for Broomfield School, the school districts that are within the Broomfield jurisdiction, still looking into that more, but it is scheduled for April 26th, so next week in the Senate for review. So we'll continue to monitor that one as well. Kim, does that answer all your questions, or do you have anything else to add about that?
No, thank you for that. And I guess what I was kind of looking at is there's a concern of if there would be an year-over-year cap, so people would not see a huge increase 1 year over the next year. And I really couldn't find that in looking at it. So I'm still seeking. I reached out to some other resources too. So thank you for that. But I think it is a danger to us only because our mill levies, especially Adams 12, is so high right now, and our housing prices in Broomfield are high, and affordable housing would hit affordable housing pretty hard, especially our senior population on fixed income. And of course, in my ward, there's a very large senior population, and they're very worried about this passing, of course. So especially if it is a large sum without having a cap year over year. So I guess that's what I'm seeking and looking at.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kim. Actually, the way it's written right now, and again, it could be amended, it says that the increase would be by no more than 1 mil per year until it's back to the level that it would have been without the decreases from the 1994 Finance Act. So if that helps, it wouldn't stack like you said, and it should not exceed that 1 mil per year on the current language. As you know, that could always change in the Senate as they review it, but as it's currently written, that's the cap.
And okay, and that's only applied to the regular school mill levy and not sometimes the school has a separate mill levy for their capital improvements.
That's a great question, and I don't know to that detail. I can look and see if I
Sure.
can get some more information.
Thanks. Great information. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm sorry it went to spam originally, so my response was a little delayed.
All right.
Danae, I'm going to add just two things really quickly. So we are in the process, and Todd might be able to provide a schedule or an outline. So now begins what's going to be on the 2021 statewide ballot initiatives. There are the title for 4 initiatives have been passed, which means now the flag goes down for the race to begin to gather signatures on each one of these. We'll be tracking these. To Councilmember Groom's question, there are 2 ballot initiatives, one that has been approved by title that will impact or potentially impact, depending upon the voters, a decrease in property tax and a decrease in sales tax. We'll send additional information out on as those ballots. Danae, let's just start including that, kind of the status of each one of those. And the reason I bring that up is because, like anything else, the cumulative effect of what our 2021 state legislation implements will be impacted by the 2021 statewide ballot initiatives that have yet to make it on the ballot, but are moving in that direction. So we need to have comprehensive conversations about the impacts of all of those.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Great. Anything else on that one or on the ballot initiatives? No? Okay. The next one is collective bargaining. Jen, do you want to start us on that conversation?
Sure, you bet. So Broomfield's always, employees have always had the ability. The governor signed collective bargaining for state employees last year. Some local governments prohibit collective bargaining or unions in their municipal shops. Broomfield is not one of those. So we've always been able to have collective bargaining. In fact, we're having a difficult, the whole, when it was in the 90s, some public works folks wanted to form a union. And so the first go around, they weren't able to get enough signatures in order to have a vote. And again, it's individual shops, so it's not overall. We haven't seen an overall move in that direction. 2 years later, Public Works decided to fire at it again. They got enough signatures and went to vote, and it was voted down. Subsequent to that, we haven't had anything like that in the last 25 years. But again, the implications of this bill, given that, let's see, is this right to organize in our charter or code? We asked that, Councilmember Schaaf, and the answer is no. So it's passive. So there's not explicit language that prohibits it. There's not explicit language that allows it. So the application from this bill will be codified in state legislation, and then the state legislation would be the language that other municipalities would follow.
Thanks, Jen. And I did see, Eileen, you raised your hand. One thing I will just mention here, this document will be in the CMO update, and there's a whole link. I don't know if you could see my separate window. I don't think you can. But Devin, it kind of teases all that out and answers all those questions as well in writing, so you have it for reference. Eileen, did you have a question?
Yes, it's regarding the collective bargaining and home rule municipalities, because there seems to be some I'm confused now as to whether or not this will impact Broomfield. Can you provide some clarification on that, if there's limits to our home rule?
I can chime in, Jen, if you don't.
Nancy?
I was going to say, Nancy, go.
Hi, everyone. I think that's going to be one of the issues that's going to come out of this bill is local collective bargaining by public employees a matter of statewide concern? If so, the state law would preempt any local charter provision or code that would restrict or have a different process than what the state law has. I think for those municipalities that have charters that address collective bargaining, they might make that argument that, and I'll use Aurora for an example. Aurora allows collective bargaining and it has a process in their charter. This state law would actually impose a different process. So Aurora might argue our charter process should control, not the state process. So it's not a ban, but it's just a different view of it. For Broomfield, we arguably don't necessarily have a dog in that fight, although we usually like to support home rule arguments when we can. Since we don't have a competing charter or code provision, even if this was a matter of local concern that a home rule municipality could govern about, we might follow the state law anyways. So I think we'll monitor that issue, the whole statewide issue, and of course we'll always support local control, but I also think we can say we support collective bargaining as well and, appreciate this proposed statute.
Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Anything else on collective bargaining? Okay, and you might see that in CCAT. I know they've been sending it up. I'll try, or sending out emails on proposed draft language. So next, the early childhood bill concept. Devin, you'd reached out about this. Just wanted to put it on everybody's radar. There is potential of a bill dropping. I did speak with CCAT about this. We're continuing to monitoring. As of now, nothing has been proposed. But the bill would essentially set in motion the process of creating a new state agency focused on early childhood and then implementing the universal preschool in Colorado. So in here, you'll see there was some language and recommendations provided by the ECLC on what that could or should look like. But it would have a big budget or fiscal impact as well. So right now, we don't have a bill that's been dropped. The draft is circulating, and we'll continue to watch and update once it is available. Devin, any specific questions about that, or just making sure it's on everybody's radar?
I do. So one of my questions is as we were discussing this bill, it was kind of like, well, why would local governments care? And then all of a sudden somebody brought up the piece that, well, there's a lot of local governments that have preschools. And so that is where this will impact. So I'm curious to get some, and perhaps now is not the right time because the bill hasn't dropped. But as this goes forward, it would be good to get our parks and recreation and as well as our health and human services opinion on this bill, just so that we have some internal guidance on where this goes. Because, as the treasurer of the Broomfield Early Childhood Council, this is great, but I want to get that other opinion for city and county of Broomfield.
Evan, we appreciate that. It's like any of these other bills, right? It's in practice or in theory. Yes, let's educate let's really expand what this looks like. And a lot of times supporting those bills before and after what that fiscal note looks like. So not just for our 5-star pre-K program that's at the rec centers, but moreover, those unfunded mandates that lay on top of what this looks like. So again, there hasn't been conversation about this bill from a supporting perspective, other than the one-time hits that's coming in from the feds supporting this and again, these are preliminary conversations that I've heard, for a 3-year time period trial balloon using those funds. But it's like anything else, right? What happens after those 3 years when people have become accustomed to and reliant on those programs, then it generally really does fall to the locals to support those existing new ones that have popped up to support the capacity in your community. So yeah, I mean, appreciate your thoughtfulness on this. It comes with big dollars attached.
And Devin, just here, it is on Clay's radar as well.
Danae's frozen, but yeah, it's on Clay's radar and it's also on.
So thank you, and it is out there and we'll continue to monitor.
There you go, good.
Perfect. Then just wanted to bring up, hopefully I got the notice that my internet's unstable, so hopefully you all can hear me. But I just wanted to mention there was an article in the Denver Post. Jean sent it out to everybody about potency and marijuana. I know Lori brought it up last week. We still have not seen a bill, but we are watching for one, and we'll let you know if we do see that drop. Another thing we just wanted to mention, there's the tidal wave of policing bills dropping around the country, and Colorado's no exception. So there are 2 bills that are floating around right now just to put on your radar. They are in response to Senate Bill 217. The first one is House Bill 1250, and then there's a Senate bill. The Senate bill is the Republican response to the 1250, but essentially it's looking at it, broadening the requirements, putting in some additional money to it, increasing the standards and the training boards. It looks like right now there's more support behind the 1250 and that the Senate bill will not get much momentum, but we will keep monitoring. But I did just want to put that on your radar, as I know 217 was a big one last year. And then we're seeing the ripple effects and the responses with COVID as well. And then the last 2 is just House Bill 1115, the Board of Health member requirements. We talked about this at the very beginning and haven't really revisited it as it's been amended and stripped down. I connected with Nancy yesterday as the House is now considering the Senate amendments. They decided to adhere, so it should proceed and head off to the governor probably soon. What it does say and how it would impact Broomfield is that the Board of Health members would have to do training. It's not very clear what that training is, to the extent and what that would look like. So the impact on Broomfield would be, as you guys serve as the Board of Health, there would be some training involved with that if this does pass. So we'll continue to monitor and update when we know more. And then the last one we just wanted to hurry and talk through was 1071, the ranked choice voting bill. Todd, do you want to hurry and run us through the update? It was on the calendar for today.
It passed out of appropriations to the House for first reading. So we made it out of appropriations, hurrah.
And were there any more amendments put to it in the Appropriations Committee?
There were not.
Great, thanks, Todd. That was all the bills we had for today. It was a lot. Again, we'll put it in the update so you can reference back and share the recording. Anything else before we log off for the day?
I just wanted to make a comment on the Board of Health bill. I read in one of the local blogs that, people think that we appointed ourselves the Board of Health. And I just want it put on the record that this is something we inherited from the founding fathers of Broomfield, who just decided to give council every job. So when I read things like your council is trying to act like the Board of Health, it's in our charter and we're trying to fix that. So wasn't me. Thanks.
Thanks, Kylene. Jen, did you have something to add? All right.
No, thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us again, and we'll see you next Friday.
Yeah, well done. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you guys so much. Great update.
Thank you. Thank you, Deai.